Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Coding Together. My name is Vikas Oja. Today we will see a Leetcode problem number 56, that is merge intervals. So in this question we are given an array of intervals, that's a 2D array, where each 1D array represents an interval with a starting point and an ending point. We have to merge all the overlapping intervals and we have to return the array of non-overlapping intervals that cover all the intervals in the input. Let's see an example to better understand the question. We have given a 2D array of intervals like here, and each 1D array in these two intervals represent an interval with a starting point and an ending point. If you see these two intervals, they are overlapping, as the starting point of this interval is less than the ending point of this interval. So we have to combine these two intervals. We will take the minimum of these two overlapping intervals as the starting point, and we will take the maximum of these two overlapping intervals as the ending point. Now we will check the other intervals 8, 10 and 15, 18. They are not overlapping with any of the other intervals, so we will add into our resultant 2D array. So we eventually we have 3 intervals that are not overlapping with each other. So how to solve this problem? Let's see. First way is to do with a brute force, where for each interval we will iterate the other intervals and see whether there is an overlapping with this interval or not. So for each element, for the next element also we will iterate over the other elements and we'll see if there is any overlapping or not. So in order following this approach, we will reach to a time complexity of n square. To reduce the time complexity, we can follow we can use the sorting. We can first sort these intervals with an increasing starting time. So if you see these intervals, the 1 is less than 2, 2 is less than 8, 8 is less than 15. So these are sorted in the increasing starting time. We will take the first interval, will mark the S, the starting time of this interval, as we'll take the starting time as the starting point of this interval, and the end as the end of this interval. Now we will compare with the next interval. So if we can see here that the starting point of this interval is less than the ending point of the previous interval, so we can merge these two intervals as they are overlapping. So when we are going to merge it, we will take the minimum of the starting points of these two intervals as the starting point and the maximum of these two overlapping intervals as the end point. So we will mark it as 6. Now we will continue, but we have increased our the interval that is covering all the inputs till here. We will again see the next interval whether we can combine those intervals as well. So next interval is having the starting point as 8, and in our previous interval the ending point is 6. So they are not overlapping. So we have to add this interval in our resultant result in the resultant array. Now we have checked that these are two non-overlapping, so we have added the interval so far that is covering the previous intervals in our resultant array, because if we move further to our right, there will not be any other intervals which will be overlapping, because we have already sorted our intervals in the starting with the increasing starting time. So we will add this what we have concluded so far in our resultant array. Now we will check. We have already seen this 8, 10. So when we add this 1 to 6 in our resultant, we'll make this as a new start and this as a new end, because the job for till here is done, because we have two non-overlapping intervals. It can be the case that in the future intervals might overlap with this one, so we have to make a fresh start with this interval and keep on repeating the same process. So here we see for the next interval that the end point of the previous interval is not the starting point of this interval is not less than the end point of this previous interval, so they are not overlapping. So again here the job is done. We have to add this 8, 10 in our resultant array, 2D array, and now we have reached the last index. So we'll add our last index also in the resultant array, because there is nothing to compare with this interval, because as soon as we have added 8, 10 in our resultant array, we have again marked this as start and this as end. So now there are no more intervals, so this will be also non-overlapping with any of the other intervals. So we will be also adding this 15, 18 in our resultant array. So let's try to code and it will be more clear. So as we have seen, we will be first sorting the intervals with the starting with the increasing order of starting time. The start will take the initial start as the first value of our interval after the sorting, and the end point as the end interval of the first interval, endpoint of the first interval. Now we will iterate through each interval, and if the intervals are overlapping, we'll increase our end as the maximum value of the interval 1, means the new interval, or the already end value. If they are not overlapping, we'll add the previous interval into the resultant array, because from this point, from the previous interval, no more intervals would be overlapping, and we'll make the start as the starting point of the new interval and the end as the end point of the new interval. We'll do this looping till we reach the last interval, and when we reach the last interval, we'll add that interval again in our resultant array. So we will return the result. We finally return the result. So let's try to run the code, and the test cases are accepted. So yeah, so thanks for watching this video. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.